So Kennedy, please, are you recording? Okay, great. All right. So again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So let's just go through today's agenda for the 3rd of May. We have our opening and welcome, which Janet has already done on behalf of Katie. And then we're going to spend the next 45 minutes on our debrief of measurement of uncertainty. Then after that, we're going to move on to the next 15 minutes with LD, where we're going to look at measurement of uncertainty and specifically the flow charts that you were introduced to. And then LD is also going to take you through the improvement projects for the echo session. So that's going to be within the last 25 minutes. And then the last 15 minutes, we're going to have our homework and any announcements as well. So I mean, I think this being our last session, really, we're going to be focusing on our improvement project. So well done to us all. That was the end of our first official homework, or the end of our official homework. Okay, so moving straight on to our first activity for this morning, which is our debrief, module 14, our debrief of measurement uncertainty. And before we go into the homework and looking at our homework, our questions, let's just have a brief, deep overview. Or let's just look back in terms of what we discussed and what we've learned about measurement uncertainty. So what is measurement uncertainty? We discussed that the purpose is to show that every result that we get in the lab or anything that you measure has a degree of uncertainty. And especially in the lab, that will come from the calibrations of the methods that you're using and from the analysis process itself, right? So each of those components bring an element of uncertainty to it. So in this activity, in talking about measurement uncertainty, we want to learn how to determine measurement uncertainty using a top-down approach, and importantly also to know how to apply measure uncertainty, especially in our advisory capacity for the results. You know, that's why you're measuring it, to be able to say that, listen, this is the result I'm giving you for this particular patient, but give or take, this may be the uncertainty in that value that I have for you now. So how do we practically apply this? So if we go to ISO 29914/2009, which is a practical guide to or for measurement uncertainty, it gives us some guidance as to what the concept of measurement uncertainty is, right? So it says that measurement uncertainty, or MU, recognizes that a single measurement result is the best available value for that measurand, right? Or whatever you're measuring. And that other values are possible if the measurement were to be repeated on the same sample. So it's the recognition, therefore, that this is the value that we have now for this particular thing that we're measuring, this property. In my head, I think of the phrase property, because, you know, when you're measuring something, is how much is it, or how long is it, or how wide of it. And here we looked at mostly at how much of it is in the sample that we're measuring. And we're saying that at this time, for this measurement that I did, this is the value that I'm getting. But it's also an acknowledgement that we could have other values related to the same thing. So, and measurement, MU is based on the known analytical performance of the measurement procedure that you're using, right? So what is the performance of the procedure that you're using? So a measurement result of X units can be stated as having an uncertainty of U units. And we express this as an interval of possible values. So that uncertainty, once you measure that uncertainty, you express it as an interval of known values. So the value of the measurand is assumed by the lab to lie within the interval, right? So X minus U or X plus U gives you that interval of units that you're then going to say that this is the value I have, but I know that if I measure it again, my value could change. But I expect my value to sit within these limits because that is my interval. So far, are we all together, please? So that when we make sure that when we come to debriefing the homework, we're all on the same page. So in the chat box, if we're on the same page, thumbs up or just give me a yes. I always like to know that we just all keeping on track before we move forward. Fantastic, good to know. So then coming back to measurement uncertainty and how it's measured, we say it's the value plus or minus the uncertainty that you have measured. So we also talked about the fact that, excuse me, let me just go back one. The uncertainty represents the limits of the range in which the true value is estimated. So we just talked about that within a given probability, right? So you have to have your confidence limits. So you're saying that this measure that I'm giving you, this interval, and the interval is really, what is the width of that uncertainty? This interval is within this limit. It's within 95% percentile or the 99% percentile. So essentially, MU is the quantification of doubt. Let me ask a question at this stage. We did a few weeks ago, I debriefed with you total error and total analytical error. As we were going through this activity, I would like one person to tell me, what do they think is the difference between total error, when we talk about error, and doubt and uncertainty? What is the difference? Here we're talking about measurement uncertainty, we're talking about doubt. What is the difference between that and what we discussed when we were talking about total error? Anybody want to attempt? There's somebody on mute. There is no wrong answer. We're all learning here. So would anybody like to try for a final 5 minutes?
Can I try, Beatrice?
Irina, go ahead. Go ahead, Irina.
Like this is also open.
Yeah.
Okay, let me this. Oh, Irina was first, so make this. Let me give you.
Okay. Okay, it's okay.
Go ahead.
It's okay.
You're on mute, Irina, if you're talking.
Okay. The main difference is bias. In total error includes bias, but uncertainty includes only uncertainty of bias. Not bias, but uncertainty on bias.
Okay,
That's
uncertainty of bias. So Irina says that when you're looking at total error, you're looking at bias, right? So how far the value you're getting is different from the expected value, right? Whilst when you're looking at uncertainty, it could be a range of different doubts, things that could affect it, but it doesn't consider that bias. That is Irina's explanation. In the chat box, do you agree or not agree? Megdas, you had your hand up next. Do you have anything to add to what Irina says? Is your opinion different than that?
But it's not different, but to add more, in my suggestion, measurement uncertainty is its inherent property of the measurement. It's inherent property, it's natural property. When we say total error, it's unpredictable and it's not natural or inherent.
Thank you. So those are some explanations, and you can, there are different ways to look at it, but essentially, because the reason I'm asking you is I was asking myself, to be honest with you, when we were going through these activities, because I'm also in a learning process, and I was asking myself, how would you explain total error versus uncertainty? And my very simple explanation that I came down to, and this may be very, very basic, but that it essentially, that is it, is that if you remember when we were looking at total error, we talked about the true value. And Irina is like, she said, how far is your value you're getting how far does it deviate from the true value? And we looked at that in terms of determining our total error. So the bias, as we were talking about, negative or positive. But remember that even that true value you stated has an amount of doubt around that. And that is the point. So uncertainty in this case covers everything. It even covers what is determined to be your true value. Whilst when you're looking at error, you're looking at error to an expected true value. So doubt exists in any measurement that you do. Any measurement that you do. And that was the simplest way. But thank you, Megdis and Irina, for also highlighting that. And I think we have to make that distinction because sometimes we make the mistake of equating uncertainty also to error. I've seen that done before. So when we go to ISO 15189/2022, it talks about measurements. It says, note 5 says, all measurements have bias and imprecision. Note 6 says, based on available data about the analytical performance of a given measurement procedure, an estimation of MU provides an interval of values. An interval of values that is believed to include the actual value of the measurand with a stated level of confidence, right? And in this case, the confidence level that we're using for most of our measurements. In the chat box, what was the confidence level that we were using, right? So we had our actual value of the measurement with a stated confidence level. What was the confidence, the common confidence level we're using, right? Yes, I see 95 in the chat box, thank you. And note 7 says, available data about the analytical performance of a given measurement procedure typically comprises uncertainty of the calibrator assigned values, and long-term imprecision of the IQC material. So these are the two main areas that we look at. So uncertainty of the calibrator assigned values and your long-term imprecision of your IQC materials, which is expressed by your what? Your long-term imprecision of your IQC values is expressed by what? Megdis, SD, Christine, SD, thank you very much. Okay, so now let's go on to look at, my apologies, my control bar is getting in the way, but let's look at to estimate MU. Guidelines recommend the use of SD or your percentage CV, which is really looking here at your imprecision, right? So we're looking at SD values, the imprecision of your method. Just give me a moment, please. I'm having a minor issue with my control bar. It's sitting right in the middle of the screen and I'm not able to see my slides. So just apologies for that. Okay. So in the medical laboratory, measurement procedures are well suited to utilizing IQC and other available data to estimate our MU without the need for measurement models and complex statistics. So in other scenarios, because remember that MU is not just a preserve of the lab, it's used in many other industries. And so in ours, we're quite lucky that what we need is just IQC materials. So the period that you choose for the data analysis of your SD, you have to ensure that it's long enough to cover known changes that happen during the course of your analysis. Because remember now, you're looking at doubt. So doubt could include, is that random stuff that could happen. So things like your reagents, your changes in your reagent lot numbers, your calibrators, your control samples, maintenance procedures, the personnel who are running the analysis and their competency or skill, and their environmental conditions. All of these things can affect your SD as well, right? So when it comes to looking at the calculation of your long-term imprecision, the time required to collect sufficient data is governed by your measuring system and those specific factors that we've talked about is things like When do you do, what is the frequency that you measure, you do your calibrations, or the frequency you change your reagents, or you change your lot numbers, the shelf life of your consumables. All of these will go into measuring that imprecision. So again, just a reminder now of how we get that calculation of MU before we start debriefing our homework. Let's just run through this very quickly. If we look at this graph is a representation of a measurement of a particular analyte serum sodium ion concentration in IQC materials. So if you look at this graph, you can tell that this graph basically, the measurements are basically following a bell curve. Now look to your right-hand side. Look at the right-hand side of the graph. You see some numbers. So you've got the N, which is the number of values, is how many times that IQC sample has been run. The X, which is your median, your average, and then your standard deviation. So you have 1,485 times that we've run the sample, and we have an average value of 140.3 with a standard deviation of 1.34. So now our standard uncertainty, we said now we're looking at the MU is being measured with our imprecision. So our standard uncertainty, our SD, is 1.34. And you can also have, if you make sure that those measurements capture all of those other factors that we looked at in the previous slide, factors that affect your lab, the frequency with which you do things, the competency of your personnel, your lot numbers, your storage of reagents. If the length of time and the number of measurements captures all of those, then you can say that you have the URW, which is your standard uncertainty within your laboratory conditions. So that's very important to note. You can have your standard uncertainty, but it may not capture all of those requirements. But if it has, then it really reflects what goes on in your lab. Then when we have our standard uncertainty, right, we talk about those intervals, that confidence limits. And the confidence limits we're using is 95%, which is plus or minus 2 standard deviations. So we take into consideration a factor of 2 to be able to come to that, what we call an expanded SD, right? Your expanded uncertainty, which it helps us to give us those intervals within which our true value will fall. And that is your value, your mean plus your uncertainty times that or plus that factor. So, and that will give us, so as we go along in the equations, you'll be able to see how we calculate that. So moving on to our first piece of homework, which was quite simple. Here we were just practicing how to calculate our measurement uncertainty. So in this activity, we calculated the standard uncertainty and expanded uncertainty using the provided data. You were asked to refer to the uncertainty hierarchy, which was job aid 1, and then you had your worksheet, MU calculations, and then you needed a calculating device, calculator, or whatever you prefer to use. So just complete the worksheet and send that back to us. And so we're going to debrief that worksheet. So we had 2 calculations or 2 examples to do, right? And the directions were using a factor of 2, which represents your 95% confidence limits. Calculate the standard uncertainty and the expanded uncertainty and complete the statements below. Okay. And there was just a little note about saying that when QC data, when plotted and displayed a Gaussian distribution, so bias is not considered significant here, okay? Because there was a general Gaussian distribution. Right, so for the first one, who would like to debrief us? Can we take the first example, please? Let me ask Janet Portillo, could you help us with the first calculation? right, with the first calculation here. Could you tell us what did you get for your standard uncertainty and your expanded uncertainty, please? Janet.
Yes, hi, good morning, good afternoon. Yeah, for the first chart, the standard uncertainty was 5 millimole per liter. Can you
Thank
hear
you.
me? Yeah. The expanded uncertainty is 10 millimole per liter.
Okay.
Yeah.
10 millimole per liter. So in that
yeah.
case, if the patient's result is 520 millimoles per liter, right? If the test result is 520 plus, plus or minus, is going to be 520 plus 10 millimoles
10.
per liter, right? Within
Yeah.
our so what would your interval be? What would your interval be?
Yeah, the actual result lies between 510 and 530 millimole per liter.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Janice. Thank you for helping us. I hear that you sound like you are not very well, so I wish you the best. Get better
Yeah.
soon.
Thank
Do
you,
we
thank
all agree in the chat box? Is that what we all got? Thumbs up if you agree this is what you got. Or if you have any questions or any deviations from that, put that in the chat box. Let us discuss. So far, I see yes, yes, yes. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay. Kara, could you please take us through the second calculation, please? Kara from Haiti. Maybe Kara can help us. Lydia, can you help us with the second one? Lydia from Zimbabwe.
Yes, Beatrice. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine. So for the standard uncertainty, sorry, I opened the wrong document.
So, okay, let's see.
For the,
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
for the standard uncertainty, I had 0.08 millimoles per liter. And then for the expanded uncertainty, I got 2 by 0.08, which gave me 0.16 millimoles per liter. And then the test result is 2.90 plus or minus 0.16. The 95% confidence interval became 2.74 to 3.06 millimoles per liter.
Thank you. Are we all happy with that? Please, again, in the chat box, yes, no. If you have any questions, you're unsure, put them in the chat box. We'll come to that. But if you're happy with that, we can move on. Thank you very much. So pretty easy, right? You have your standard uncertainty, which is equal to your imprecision, your SD, right? You have your factor of 2, which is your 95% confidence limits. You multiply that. It gives you your expanded uncertainty, and then you apply that in terms of the value, the patient result, plus or minus to give you the interval, the actual range in which your true result lies. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, so again, any questions, any unsures, put them in the chat box. We'll come to that, right? But let's move on to our second example. And so now that we've practiced how to measure, to get our measurement and certainty, how to apply it to our results so that we can look at the range, we wanted to say, how about when we repeat samples? How are we able to determine if our first result was correct, right? So the purpose of this activity was to learn how to utilize MU to advise clients regarding their results. So you had your worksheet reliable repeat, and then you needed your calculation device, and you were given instructions to just go through that worksheet and do the calculation. So let's look at our first worksheet, which was reliable. It says, and the instruction says, based on the given scenario, calculate the expanded MU, write your answer on the space provided, select your appropriate reaction, whether you are happy or sad, by placing an X mark in the corresponding board. And in both scenarios, again, the notice here that bias is ignored because we have a standard bell curve, right? So how the values are falling are within the normal bell curve. And again, we're using that 95% interval limit as well. So for the first scenario, we were told that the clinician called to question a result that you came from your lab, and it was the result of 103 millimoles per liter. They requested a repeat, and you asked for the analyte for the analyst to retest the original sample and report the results to you from the retest. In the meantime, you reviewed the QC and found it acceptable. You also noted that the imprecision, the SD, was 2 millimoles per liter. Your repeat, when you repeated the sample, the result you obtained was now 110 millimoles per liter. Before we go to look at this further, are we happy or sad with this result, please? Were you happy or sad with this result? In the chat box, were you happy or sad? Happy or sad? I don't see any responses. I want to see sad. Emmanuel says I was happy, but I see lots of sad. Okay, so more sad, another happy. Okay, Emmanuel's changed his mind. He says sad. Okay, so most of you say sad, right? And let's see whether you're right or not. So if you look at what you were given, the confidence limit here is what? The SD was 2. So if we look at the K factor, the 95% confidence limit we're using, we're going to double that. So that's 2 plus 2, which gives us 4. So you have 4. So now you have 103 millimoles per liter plus or minus is now then between 99 or 107 millimoles per liter. We're going to be sad. Why? Because if you look at the value of 110, that lies outside of what our interval is, like what our range is now. So by repeating the same sample upon request, you have a value of 110, which lies outside of both plus or minus 4 millimoles per liter. Not only that, but if you look at the confidence limit 3 times, so if you take into account, if you have a confidence limit of 99%, right, which is 2 plus 2 plus 2, 3 times that, your value is still lying outside of the range. So for this particular case, we are sad. Okay, again, if you have any issues with that result, or you had any issues, put a comment in the chat box. I don't see any so far. Please keep in mind that post-analysis storage temperatures and conditions, time between repeat testing, and specimen stability, especially once the tube cup is removed, can all affect your repeat, right? So we have to take that into consideration. So that is even another element of uncertainty here, where you're saying that all of these factors could in the interim have had an impact on your sample. And that is why in the lab, we say that the whole system, when it comes to quality in the lab, everything is equally important as the next, because the one weak link can break the whole chain. So if you have to make sure that your pre-analytical processes, your analytical and post-analytical processes are all solid, because you may face a scenario like this. And if you don't monitor your temperatures in your fridges and it's not up to scratch, your sample could deteriorate in the interim and you might find that you have a wrong result. So very important to keep those things in mind. Quality is about the whole system. Scenario 2, please. The clinician called to question this morning's result. Again, you have the same scenario, but this time we have an SD of 5 millimoles per liter. So it's the same scenario as the first one. But this time our SD, our intermediate position, is 5. And we have a retest value of 110. Add, please, in the chat box. Are we going to be happy? Megda's happy. Irina happy. Janet is happy. Christine is happy. Emmanuel is happy. Mosiah is happy. So we're all happy. We're all happy. And we should be happy, right? Because here now we're talking about a confidence limit, expanded MU of 10. So it's going to be your value plus or minus 10. So our range now is 193 to 113. So now our value of 110 sits within those limits. And even when you expand it to the 99% confidence limit, we are still capturing that result within that. So we can say truly that the result that we had, that 103 millimoles per liter, was a true reflection of the value of that measurement within the sample. So we are happy here. So the repeat value is analytically the same with a 95% and a 99% degree of confidence. So we're happy all in all. Okay. Last scenario, then we talked about the rule of 3, right? And this is where we're looking at, is it us or the patient? Is it us or is it the patient? So before this, when we were doing all the other calculations, we were looking at the method. We were looking at the imprecision of the method to look at our uncertainty. But here we're looking at intra-individual variation versus your analytical variation. We're going to take both of those into consideration when looking at our MU. So Kaplan, Pace, and Casimir, I do not dare pronounce that last name, but they say that if the difference between the first and subsequent measurements is greater than 3 times the standard deviation of the assay, then you can be 95% confident that the difference between the 2 measurements is not due to chance. So if you have a difference of greater than 3 times the standard deviation, then if you measure that sample again, the difference between the 2 measurements is not down to chance alone. Something is going on there, right? So in our last homework, our last activity, we looked at how to use the rule of 3. And the purpose was, again, to utilize MU to advise clients or regarding their results. You had job A3, which was diagnostic uncertainty, and worksheet rule using the rule of 3. You were asked then to read and follow the instructions on the worksheet, review the RCV notes on job A3. What does RCV mean in the chat box? The first one I see will get $3, a bonus $3. What does RCV mean before we move on to our next slide? So review your RCV notes on job A3 for scenario D and complete the worksheet and submit the completed worksheet. RCV, I don't see any responses in the chat box. Let me ask somebody, anybody, hands up if you want to tell us what does RCV mean before we move on. Relative coefficient of variation. No, reference range variations. Reference range? Wow, okay, we'll talk about that. So reference change values. Thank you very much, Sanderson. You are the first one. You get the $3. Thank you, Sanderson, for that. So here we're looking at reference change values. So let's see what you had to do per the worksheet. You were given scenarios A, B, and C. You were asked to calculate the expanded MU, and then using the rule of 3, select your appropriate reaction, whether you'll be happy or sad. So same here we're looking at something different. We're applying a different set of rules in terms of determining what our uncertainty is. So in scenario A, this was the scenario you were given. It says a clinician called to determine if the therapeutic drug that they were given to the patient was effective by lowering the patient's result. So we expected the therapeutic drug to lower the patient's result. The baseline, so your pre-treatment value or measurement of that patient's test result was 100 millimoles per liter, and the post-treatment was 75 millimoles per liter. And your SD now was 10 millimoles per liter. Are you happy? Because the patient's response signal was larger than the analytical noise and possibly points to a response to the drug. So are you happy because we are saying that the drug is, the therapeutic drug is working and the levels of that measurand is reducing? Or are you sad because the limitations of the analytical procedure can account for the entire difference and cannot provide evidence of a response by the patient? Is your result saying that, actually, no, what you're seeing is just down to the imprecision of the method still? So are we happy or sad in this scenario? In the chat box, please, before we move to the answer, are we happy or sad? Happy, 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 happy. Let me ask somebody to, Michael, why are we happy? Tell us why we're happy before we look at the answer.
Okay, we were expecting the drug to reduce the value. So in pre-treatment, the result was 100, and then post-treatment, the result was 75. So actually, it has reduced. This is our expectation.
Okay, so Michael says it has reduced because if you look at, pre-treatment it was 100 millimoles per liter, but post-treatment it is 75. Who disagrees? Raise your hand and tell us why you may disagree with Michael's summation. Who disagrees? Sanderson, go ahead.
Thank you. I disagree in the sense that this is a sad situation, because if we look at the standard uncertainty is 10 millimoles per liter. So using the rule of 3, then we will multiply that by 3 to have an expanded MU of 30 millimoles per liter. So now, calculating the range into which the true value is believed to lie is supposed to be between 70 millimoles per liter to 130 millimoles per liter. So if we look at the repeat result is 75 millimoles per liter, which is within that range where the true value is lying. So therefore, this reduction is not as a result of the treatment or the therapeutic drug. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanderson. So Sanderson, you're right. The only thing I would say is that you use the 99% percentile unit, but here we're still using an expanded, for the expanded uncertainty, we're still using the factor of 2. So here we're taking our imprecision, which was 10, and we're saying that if you times that, 10 times 2, that's 20, right? So we had 100 millimoles per liter initially. So plus or minus 20, that gives us a range of 80 to 120 with a 9% certainty. So if you look at your result, the second result would have to be at least 70. It will have to be at least 70 or below for there to be a 95% confidence that this is analytically different, okay? It would have to be at least 70 or below to show us that this is different. Since the observed change of 20 millimoles per liter is less than 30 millimoles per liter, the difference can be attributed to the variation in the assay. Okay, so you're looking at 80 to 110. If you take away, and the value that we got is 75. So that 75 is sitting above the 70. How do we get to the 70? Why are we saying that the second result will have to be at least 70? Because what is your standard deviation? Your standard is 10. So if you take away 10 from the 80, look at the interval limit, plus or minus that 20 is 80 to 120. So if you take away that 10, you're left with 70. So to really see a true difference, you want a value which is 70 or below. But the value we got was 75. So we're still above the value where we can say that this is a true change in terms of the amount of the analyte within that patient sample. So thank you very much, Sanderson, for that. Now, scenario B, and I have 1 minute to take you through scenario B, but we'll try. Say the clinician called to determine if the therapeutic drug was effective by lowering the patient's test results. So now we have another scenario, right? Think about scenario A, same scenario. So pre-treatment, we were at 1 moles per liter. Post-treatment, we are now at 68 millimoles per liter. Our imprecision is still the same at 10, right? And we're using our same 95 confidence intervals. So are we happy or are we sad in the chat box for the second one? Are we happy or are we sad? Happy, happy, happy. I see lots of happy. Yes, if we look at, we're going to be happy this time because it's the same scenario, same values, but this time, if you look at the range, we're below that, right? We're below that 30. So the observed change is 32, which is greater than the 30. We are 95% confident that the patient result has decreased to a degree that is detected analytically, right? So now we're confident. And it's just, can you imagine just a value of 2 can make the difference? And that is why we take the time we really take the time to do all these total error and measurement uncertainty, etc. So we have a hand from Petrus, and we also have a comment from Janet, who said they don't understand. So Petrus, maybe start with you, and then we'll move to Janet.
Hi, Beatrice. Thanks for the opportunity. I don't agree with the first scenario, or maybe it's my understanding. How accurately can you attribute the difference in the measurement to variations in sample, but not to the therapeutic drugs that were administered to the patient? Is it that because could it be that the drug is also responding slowly, that it does not give us the reference ranges or the interval that we were looking for? How certain could you say that it's because of the maybe variation on the sample what we were measuring? I tend to disagree a little bit. I don't agree.
Okay, so what you are saying is that it could be that the drug is working anyway, right?
Yes.
But we are saying that when we look at measurement uncertainty, is the doubt that there could be in that result, Petrus. So you are measuring that, you are actually now quantifying doubt. And you're saying that in any system, there's doubt. Just like when we were looking at total error, we said in any measurement, there may be an element of error. And how do we quantify that? And so let's say that, Petrus, you are absolutely right, that actually maybe the change could be from the therapeutic drug working. But what we do is that we have done these quantifications to say that let us try it as possible in the result that we're giving out to people, right? So when we look at these intervals and this uncertainty and we estimate the range, we're kind of saying that, well, yes, it might be very, very, like a very small percentage that the drug is working. But if you look at our uncertainty, the uncertainty that we've measured, it doesn't look like this result is really reflective of a change, right? It's not reflective of a change yet. I think that's the important thing, yet. Remember that sometimes drugs may take time to work. So I think that that is what we're trying to say. We're not saying it's not working at all, but we're saying that based on the limits that we have set to be able to make sure we give you a true result, we are not seeing a change yet. Because if you go to scenario 2, now, what is the value? 68. Now we are down to 68 millimoles per liter. And now we're saying, yes, we're seeing an analytical change because that value lies outside of that initial range where we say that the initial value lies. And I think that nothing, even in terms of this, nothing is ever precise, but we put in place these calculations and this limit to make sure that we can be as accurate as possible. LD, do you have anything to add to that, LD or Janet, just so that we can, because the issue, yeah.
Thank you, Beatrice. So I think it was Petros who was asking that question. And that's the reason, Petros, we are utilizing, by the way, maybe the confusion is on this debrief, we are not only using the rule of 3, but also we're utilizing our concept for MU, okay? So Petros, when you have 2 results and you want to know, is this second result, is the decrease or increase due to the effect of the drug? You have to consider your MU, okay? Because if the new, the repeat or the second result is within your MU range, then you cannot attribute that safely to the effect of the drug. But we are not saying here that the drug has no effect at all. But in terms of the therapeutic effect, you cannot conclude that it's because of the drug. Why? Because it's within your MU range. All right? Petros, is that helpful?
Yeah, I kind of understand what you're saying now. Yes,
we are also not saying here, we're not concluding that the drug does not have effect. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is we cannot conclude that it's a therapeutic effect because of the MU. All right?
Great stuff, yes.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Beatrice. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Then we move to scenario C, and scenario C was a little bit more complex than the other scenarios where we're looking at something different. We said the clinician called to determine if the hormone injection was effective by increasing the patient's test results. The baseline pre-treatment was reported to be 50 millimoles per liter. The post-treatment results was 63 millimoles per liter. You noted the intermediate precision at level 1, 40 millimoles per liter, right, is 4 millimoles. So the imprecision is 4, and at level 2 of 90 millimoles per liter, the imprecision is 7 millimoles per liter. Are you happy because the patient's response signal was larger than the analytical noise, or are you sad because the limitations of the analytical procedure can account for this difference? So are we happy or sad in this particular scenario, please? Scenario C, were we happy or sad in our answers? We're happy. I see lots of happies coming through. So let's look at this very quickly, whether we're going to be happy or sad with this result. So if we go again, we look at taking the first one, level 1, which is the 95%. Our expanded MU is now 8 millimoles per liter. Our original result is 50. So now the true value of the patient's sample is between 42 to 58 with a 95% certainty. So in terms of our second result, that means the second result will have to be at least 62 or greater for there to be a 95% confidence that it is analytically different. The observed change of 63 is greater than 62, so we are good. We are 95% confident that the patient's result has increased to a degree that is detected analytically. So in the chat box, are we all happy with that? Hopefully, I didn't see anybody disagreeing. Everybody was happy with that answer, so I hope that's what you also got. Then in the final scenario, which was D, here we had a little bit more of a complicated scenario where we were considering not just, we're looking at the percentage CD, but here we're not just considering our analytical variation, but we're also looking at biological variation as well. So variation that happens biologically within a group or a population, right? And so you were given a formula to use for this, where for percentage measurement uncertainty, here we're using 3 times. We were asked to use 3 times. So to measure your percentage uncertainty was 3 times your analytical CV squared plus your biological variation, percentage biological variation squared, and that would give you your percentage MU at a 95% confidence limit. And then also you had your ME in units, which is your percentage ME that you just calculated times your test result over 100. So that was plain enough. And we're doing the same thing. Are we happy or are we sad? So in this scenario, we are told that the clinician called to determine if the therapeutic drug was effective, but by increasing to increase the patient's test result. Your baseline pre-treatment was reported to be 40 millimoles per liter, and post-treatment you were at 50 millimoles per liter. You noted that the imprecision was 6% at level 1 and 4.5% at level 2. And your CVI, your biological variation, was 8%. Are we happy or are we sad with this result, please? Scenario D, were we happy or sad? Michael says sad. Let me see other responses. Michael said he was sad. So lots of sads. I don't see any happy. So let's move on to, so those of you who were said sad, you were correct. You are correct, excuse me. Because there are 2 results are analytically and biologically different. They need to be by 30%. So if calculation, which was 3 times, right, 6% squared, plus that was your confidence limit at 95, and then 8 squared, which was your biological interval, that would give you 30%. That would overall, you'd have 3 times 10%, which was equal to 30%. You'd find the square root of these 2. So now you have 50 millimoles per liter times 30% over 100 to give you your actual unit, your MU unit. So the second result would have to be at least 52, which is 40 plus or minus 12 or greater, for there to be a 95% confidence that it is analytically and biologically different. So we didn't see that. So we're not happy at this time. The note here says, if we only use analytical variation of 6%, so if you don't use the biological reference variation and you're only considering the analytical variation, then you would go straight to looking at your level times 6%, your actual result, sorry, times 6% over 100, which will give you 2.4 millimoles per liter. You round that up to 3 millimoles per liter. And then if you're looking at your rule of 3, you're going to do 3 times 3, which will give you 9, right? And if you look at that, because the second result would have to be at least 49, because it's 9 plus 40, or greater for there to be a 95% confidence that is analytically different, we say that the second result is analytically different, but probably not biologically different, right? Because it wasn't higher than that. So let me go to the chat box and see if I don't see. If you are still confused about any of this, or you are happy, please put a chat in the chat box. I will have to hand over to LD now, but I will come back and into the chat box and try and answer some questions with LD and Janet's support. But for now, thank you very much for your attention, and let's go through the key messages. So can I have some support to read the key messages? Emmanuel, please. Can you take us through our key messages? Emmanuel from Tanzania. Okay, Christine, can you help us with our key messages, please?
The uncertainty gives the limits of the range in which the true value of the measurand is estimated to be at a given probability. The long-term percent CV or standard deviation data gained through the laboratory's IQC is sufficient for satisfying the minimal criteria for MU determination. The MU is helpful in differentiating whether a change in a serial test result is due to analytical variation or a true physiological change.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. So at the end of this activity, you may still have some questions, but do you think at least you are halfway there? Can you calculate uncertainty and expanded uncertainty? Can you translate expected analytical variation and limitations of examination procedure when clinicians have queries? At least, are you confident that you can start this process, that we have taught you enough to be able to practically apply MU? Right, thank you. And for those of you who have questions in the chat box, I know Janet, I'm coming to the chat box now to see whether we could answer some of those questions. And LD, sorry for taking over 10 minutes of your time. I hope we can make up, but thank you very much, everyone, for your attention.
Thank you so much, Beatrice. No problem with the time. I think that time was well spent. Let me just share my slide. I'm assuming you guys are looking at my slide. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, we are.
All right. I appreciate how Beatrice debrief the measurement of uncertainty. I always learn from Beatrice. By the way, I think it was Lydia who said that your OFRA is your you want to meet OFRA. Beatrice is our Slanta OFRA, FYI. All right. So we have covered the debrief of measurement uncertainty. And in the next 20 minutes, let me share with you a flow chart for measurement uncertainty. And also some questions were raised during the office hour that hopefully we can clarify. All right. So MU, this cow is saying moo. And I will be using the ISOTS 20914 for the MU flow chart. So just a leveling field. Why do we need to estimate MU? All right. So here's the big picture reason coming from the ISOTS 20194. And I quote, to ensure the measurement results are useful and safe in medical practice. And not only that, to permit meaningful comparison. What are we comparing here? The result that we obtained with medical decision limits and previous results. And that's what we were doing with the Habikan of SAD, comparing the previous results to the current results. So to have a meaningful, permit meaningful comparison with medical decision limits and previous results of the same kind of individual, medical laboratories require estimates for the overall variability. All right. So it's accepted, it's a fact that the results will vary. You will never get the same exact result when you repeat and repeat and repeat, even if it's the same reagent, the same person, the same analytical system. You will never get the same exact value. There will be a variability. All right. All right, so let's do this. All right, this is a flow chart that illustrates the overall process to be followed by a medical laboratory in estimation of MU. And in these flow charts, it identifies the interrelationship among the major sources of MU that should be accounted for by the laboratory when estimating MU for a given measuring system. All right, so help me out here. We have here, and you have seen this figure before, between the manufacturer of the method and the highest order of available metrological reference, metrological traceability. All right, I want you to focus your attention here at this section here. Okay, measurement uncertainty per ISO 17511, uncertainty of the calibrator. Please take note of that because that's here, down here. Uncertainty of calibrator combines all calibration hierarchy uncertainties as well as uncertainty of bias correction at each step if it is applied. All right, please take note of that. All right, so we have here the IVD manufacturer, our method manufacturer, which will provide us calibrator, reagents, and of course, the measuring system, if it's a method or if it's an equipment. All right, so let's start first with this uncertainty, okay? From the calibrators that were provided to us, okay, we have here the end user calibrator, and there's an assigned value uncertainty. So UCAL is the uncertainty of the value assigned to an end user calibrator. How do you obtain this? Well, simply request it from the manufacturer or the in vitro diagnostic procedure. All right. Going to the other side. The end user IVD measurement procedure will also have uncertainty. And we can obtain that, and we have established that during the debrief with Beatrice, from our long-term imprecision. So we have this uncertainty RW, which is the standard uncertainty within laboratory conditions. And Beatrice has emphasized this. What conditions are we talking about? Changes in lot number, maintenance, personnel. All right. So if the period is long enough to capture all these conditions, the changes, then that's a good representation of long-term imprecision. All right. Now, these two are the biggest contributor of MU in our laboratory results. All right. So following this flow chart, once we have these two, then here there's a decision that we need to make. The question is the bias within specification or not? All right. So that is the measurement. This is measurement bias verification. Let's say it's no. All right. So if it's no, meaning there's no bias, then your uncertainty is simply combining. And there was a question raised before during the office hour. How do we combine? Okay. So this is combining the uncertainty coming from the UCAL and the uncertainty of your long-term M precision obtained from your long-term M precision. All right. So far, are you guys following? On the chat box?
Yes.
Okay. Does that mean I can continue? Very good. All right. Now, by the way, please take note that here the formula of the standard uncertainty of the measurand is the square root of the square of your UCAL plus the uncertainty RW. Well, you might be asking, LD, why do we need to square it? And then there's a rule that we cannot standard deviation or standard uncertainty. And that's the reason why we have to go to variance. But don't worry about that. We'll explain that one later. All right. Going back to this measurement bias verification, what if the bias is not within the specification, meaning there is a bias? Then you need to do a bias correction. So define and implement bias correction. This is now called correction uncertainty or uncertainty attributed by the bias. All right. So once you have this, so now you have uncertainty from the bias, uncertainty from CAL, and then uncertainty from our long-term imprecision, then you simply combine this here, which is the UCAL uncertainty from our standard within lab conditions, and the uncertainty attributed by the bias. Again, this is an example of combining several uncertainties. Once you have this uncertainty of a measurand, you can simply expand it by multiplying, and usually we use 95% confidence interval, so it would be 2. If you want to use 99, then expand it by multiplying 3. Is this flow chart helpful enough to understand how do we estimate our MU in the lab? It's good enough? I need some response. Irina, please.
Sorry, I have a question about bias correction. What is the
Yes.
bias correction mean? Is it recalibration or something else?
So here, the bias correction, maybe in the next slide, I can actually, it's a good question, Irina. You actually are reading my mind, because I was anticipating a question about the bias. Before I answer you, Irina, let me go to the next slide. And hopefully we can help each other. I prepared this slide because somebody will probably ask, what's that bias? How do we get that? So I want to link this to what we have learned, okay? Do you guys remember consensus-based metrics? Okay, very good, Christine. So let's play a game. There are 2 formulas here, the one in your left, which is also my left, and the one on the right. Let's start with the one on the left. You're facing your screen. The formula is given here, labs monthly CV divided by peer monthly CV. This is a formula for which consensus-based metric before? On the chat box, please. Is that CVI? You start with the one on your left. Not that left, the other left. All right, CVI. Last monthly CV, well, there you go. There's a change there. Michael said SDI. All right. For the right. Michael, all right. Okay. Let me admit, boys. This formula, my friends, is for your SDI. Okay. So again, on the chat box, will SDI give you an indication of which error? Is it SE or RE? On the chat box, please. SDI, is it RE? Be very careful. This is not just SD, it's an SDI. Are you sure it's RE? Okay, no Obed changes his mind. Is it SD? All right, let me remind you, we have covered this in our EQA, activity on EQA. How proficient are we? Please remember that although this is an SD, the SDI is a peer-based measure of bias. All right? It describes how far our mean from the peer or all laboratory methods mean. So let me link this one to the question of Irina. What is a bias correction? And I'm going further to how do we obtain. So here's a quick answer, Irina. I hope it will satisfy also me. So the appearance of a medically unacceptable measurement bias can be detected by the EQA surveillance, providing that the EQA schemes fulfill some mandatory requirements. Okay. Now, the requirements here is that EQA must be commutable. So the bias, and the question is, how do we obtain the bias? How do we know that one? The answer is this can be detected by the EQA surveillance that we are participating in. So the question is, what is this measurement bias verification? Well, this one, the laboratory needs to ensure that the magnitude of any measurement bias does not exceed the acceptable specification for medical use. And again, this one can be obtained on EQA performance. Now, on the question of Irina, remind me again, is this a correction in the, what's the word that you use? Recalibration, is that the word?
Yeah.
Let me answer that one on an example, and maybe we can both agree to disagree. It's not, yes, at some point it may need the recalibration, but my quick answer to that is we have to look at the manufacturer in their package insert if they have corrected already the bias. Because let me go back to this one. This particular bias here, specification, we have to compare it to a target value, right? All right. Now, if the bias is not, it's not within the specification, then we have to make some corrections. But in that correction, we have to go back to the IVD first, because maybe they already have corrected this. And as I have said, let me use this, my next slide after this, to show you how we do that one. But on this slide, let me complete this one. SDI, please remember that the SDI that we obtain from EQA, please remember that this can be used to monitor your bias in relation to your MU. All right. Now, on the other hand here, this is our CVI. All right. Now, this is a peer-based measure of M precision. On the chat box, again, you have heard me this for several times. What are the statistical parameters that we use to represent M precision? We just discussed several. Janet Portillo said CBSD. Christine, you're right. All right, very good. CB and SD. CBI, yes, very good. And so we're here comparing our laboratory CB to our peer or all laboratory CB. Now, please remember that another statistical parameter that we use to represent M precision is variance. So here's the formula for variance. It's the square of the standard deviation or a square of your uncertainty. Are you guys following? So when you say variance, it can be a square of the standard deviation or the square of your standard uncertainty. As I've said a while ago, we cannot add and we cannot subtract standard deviation. Right? Because you might be asking, LD, why do we need to square and then get the square root? That is because we cannot directly add or subtract standard deviation. We cannot also directly add or subtract U, that's the measurement uncertainty. And that's the reason why we need to go convert this into variance and get the square root. All right, I'll emphasize that. All right, Irina, this is the slide I was referring to. All right, so this is a typical pathway for estimating measurement uncertainty. And hopefully I can clarify more about the bias. So the first step here is to understand what your measurand is. So if we have a TEA, wherein we compare our total error to our TEA, there's also a maximum allowable error. And I'll preempt the question. LD, how do I obtain that? Well, I'm asking you guys first. All right, now, don't worry, I'll answer that one where we can get. So let's follow this particular pathway. First, we estimate our M precision, our long-term M precision. And from that, you can obtain your standard uncertainty under within laboratory conditions. On the chat box, please. Are you confident now how to obtain the URW? Yes or no? Confident? If you're very good, make this. All right, good, because that's straightforward. If you know your standard deviation, then that's so easy to calculate your standard measurement uncertainty. All right, what's the next step? You request for the uncertainty of the calibration, or I'm sorry, the calibrator. And this is coming from IVD manufacturer. All right. So question is, how do I obtain this? Well, request it from the manufacturer. All right, let's follow this. All right, question. Do you have the uncertainty of the calibrator? Here's a yes or no. Now, let's start with, of course, the no. If the answer is no, your standard uncertainty or uncertainty rather of that particular measurand is simply your standard uncertainty obtained from your long-term M precision. Are we good so far? Are we good so far? Okay, thank you, Christine. Thank you, Macdes. All right, now, what if the uncertainty of the calibrator is obtained? It's yes. So how do we calculate our measurement uncertainty for that measurand? It will simply be combining their UCAL, but you need to square it so that you can add it to the square of your uncertainty from your long-term and precision. And then you can get the square root. Are we good so far? Now, if you'll be asked by whoever is asking you, LD, how do we estimate our MU? Well, the short answer is if you have your uncertainty from long-term and precision, from quality control data, and your UCAL, those two are the largest contributor to uncertainty of a measurement in medical laboratories. All right. This flowchart is, the pathway is not done yet. Right, let's continue. There's a question here. Okay, is medically significant bias present? Okay. Well, if the answer is no, by the way, help me out here. What's your indicator that your bias is within the allowable? Where can you glean from that you can say, well, my bias is still okay or not? Where can you get that info? How do we obtain bias? Very good, Obed, from your EQA. Remember, the SDI is an indicator of our bias. All right, very good. So if there's no medically significant bias present, then you go back to either combining the uncertainty of UCAL and your imprecision. But if you don't have the UCAL, then your measurement uncertainty will be your uncertainty from the RW. All right, what if we have a medically significant bias present? So Irina, here's where, before we do any changes in recalibration, we have to ask ourselves, and then we have to communicate to the manufacturer if this bias has already been resolved from their end using their calibrator. Because if we keep on recalibrating, it might not be helpful. All right. So Irina, I hope I have answered you that if there's a bias present, first, we need to communicate to the manufacturer if this bias has been resolved. All right. If it is yes, then you can go back here and then enter to calculating this and this. And fortunately, if the manufacturer says, well, we have not resolved that bias, then the laboratory will estimate and correct that bias. Now, you might be asking, LD, how do we do that? It's a long answer. If Irina, you're interested on how to estimate and correct the bias, I can provide you the long answer from the ISO TS 20914. Would you be interested, Irina?
Yes, yes, of course. Thank you, LD.
Okay, I'll do that. All right. Unfortunately, I don't have time to discuss. This is a long process, but I want you guys to get the big picture here. That if that bias has not been resolved, then it will fall on us to estimate and correct the bias. And then that lab estimate is now what we call the uncertainty attributed by the bias. So how do you obtain the final uncertainty? You combine the uncertainty, RW, uncertainty from the calibrator, and uncertainty from the bias. I'm hoping that looking through a flowchart and this overview, it has cemented your understanding on how to obtain MU in clinical laboratory methods. Is that goal of mine achieved? Is that yes or no? Obed, do you have your hand is up? Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you very much. And so I've understood how you explain this.
Mm,
And maybe I'm thinking of doing this as my improvement project.
okay.
So I want to be very clear. The no, if I don't get the acidity for the calibrator from the manufacturer, the
Yes.
first no there is okay for me to use. If I do
You,
get the first one, where
this
you are.
one.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's fine.
Yes.
Okay.
By the
So
way,
if
this
I
is not
do
mine.
have,
This is
I'll
this is
come to the
coming
second.
from Obed. This is coming from the ISO TS 20914.
Oh, great, great.
So yes, if we, why would they provide this if they will not allow? We have to justify that. Well, we cannot obtain the UCAL. What will we do? Well, this is option.
Okay.
By the way, Obed, that's a good question.
Thank you very much.
If this one is your measurement uncertainty, this would be your what term should I use? It's an underestimation. You understand me, Obed?
Okay.
It's an underestimation. Why? Because we don't have the other potential source of uncertainty coming from your UCAL. Are you with me? It would be better if you can combine your UCAL and your uncertainty coming from M-Precision. All right. I'm hoping that I have achieved my goal that to make it clearer, having a flow chart explaining how to obtain the MU in the laboratory. Janet Portella said, yes, please share the chart. Yes, I can share the chart. All right. Now, I'm not done. Irina, please, your hand is up. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you very much for your explanation. I really appreciate it, but I still have a question.
Go ahead, please.
I'm a little bit confused. My question is, when can we have situation with medically significant bias present? After all, we verified the method and we should not have a large bias. We cannot use a method that has not been verified. I mean, at the stage of uncertainty calculation, the method must already be verified. So our bias should not have, our method should not have a large bias.
I'm hearing you, Irina, and I'm actually with you. I don't want to start with a debate because to be very honest with you, I am on the side of the TE. But since I was assigned to teach MU, and then this is a requirement from ISO 15189. By the way, friends, there's an ongoing debate about the usefulness of MU, the actual practical usefulness and the estimation. Irina, I'm with you. I totally understand where you're coming from. Irina, are we good? Unfortunately,
Thank you,
there's still a debate here, and please remember that LD is not an expert. Experts, including Westgard and White, and there seems to be two different understanding. But at the end of the day, those of us who wants to be accredited in ISO 15189, there's a requirement that we need to follow. Therefore, I am presenting here from the ISO itself, how do we obtain MU? But on the question on bias, there's a big debate. And I'll be honest, I am leaning towards the total error concept. Janet, go ahead, please.
All right, I can't not give my 2 cents worth. So I'm with Irina on the fact that we verify our methods. Okay, so again, one of our improvement projects, if you haven't got your methods verified, then obviously you're going to have, you may have more uncertainty in your system. So I know we've been talking a lot about measurement uncertainty, but if we put a management system or quality management system in place, and we have all our controls in place, and as Beatrice said earlier, our reagents are stored correctly, all the good things, then we minimize our measurement uncertainty. We minimize that uncertainty. And I think that's what our job is to minimize the uncertainty so that we don't have to go to check biases. So if we get the right instrumentation and we can purchase the good IBVs, and we have all those systems in place. So I think that is our ultimate goal, is to minimize the measurement uncertainty. So let's not forget that, because we've just been through a whole 6 weeks of QC. So just running the QC is not the only thing that you need to do. But do you see how that measurement uncertainty is being taken from our QC material? So if we don't look after our QC process, then our MU is going to be excessive. So I just wanted to add that because we can get caught up in all the variance and the calculations. So thank you for that, but I'm with Irina on that one.
All right, thank you so much, Janet. And I'm happy that we have these experts around us, because myself, I'm learning. All right. As I asked a while ago, how do we obtain maximum allowable MU? And here's the answer. It's based on models defined by 2014 European Federal Clinical Chemistry and Laboratory Medicine Consensus Conference. I'll be very honest with you. I'm on the total error side, and I personally have not used like comparing the MU to this. I'm always comparing total allowable error. I'm not saying that the MU is wrong, but if you want to compare the MU that you obtain, because we need to have it below the maximum allowable MU. And here's the source. All right. Last, I want to make sure that you understand. And this is, I'm showing you an example of calculating precision conditions. All right. So here's the measurand. I'm using the sodium that was used by Beatrice earlier. All right. We have the unit in millimoles per liter. All right. So by the way, when you say define your measurand, it needs 3 distinct information. You need to know your analytes, what the sample is, either serum, plasma, or urine. And then you need to know your measurand, which is sodium, and then the units. It has to have the units, millimoles per liter. The method is given here. It's an ISE. Measurement procedure is given here. And here, it's given the calibrator traceability. And this is very crucial because of that metrological traceability requirement. So the calibrator is traceable to a certified reference material, CRM. First source of uncertainty is coming from the calibrator. So fortunately, it's given here, 0.71 millimoles per liter, all right? Bias, okay, based in this scenario, assessed by EQA and using a commutable material with target value set by IS 15195, accredited reference laboratory, the average bias is not medically significant. Okay, that's good. No bias. All right, let's look at our second source of uncertainty coming from intermediate precision data from our IQC. There are 3 levels here. One in plasma level 2, and there's a urine. Okay, let's just focus in the plasma. Data collected period, the end is 342, the mean is 134.8. Let me pause here. Question. With this information here, on your intermediate precision from IQC data? Can you compute standard deviation with the n and the mean? Yes or no? Definitely yes, Janet said. So let me ask the question. From your intermediate precision, can you calculate your standard uncertainty? And Barnisa said yes. Sabira said yes. Sanderson, sir, how do you obtain your standard uncertainty from intermediate precision? Sanderson, can you speak?
So, I think from what we have learned is the standard deviation is equivalent to or is equal to the standard uncertainty.
Spot on, sir. Thank you. Very good. So therefore, your SD, which is 0.85, in our discussion with MU, that would be your standard uncertainty under within laboratory conditions, right? Because it's a long-term precision. Now that you have this, can we combine uncertainty calibrator and then our certainty RW? Then definitely we can. And here's the formula. Again, you need to square 0.85, that's your RW, and then you have to square 0.71, that is your uncertainty of cal. Get the square root, the answer is 1.11. 1.11 is the uncertainty for the measurand sodium in plasma at millimoles per liter. Are you guys following? Yes or no? Still, are we still good? Very good. All right. I'll not discuss these other levels and in the urine. Let me just discuss plasma level 1. All right. Now, the expanded uncertainty, and we have learned that, is simply multiplying that uncertainty that we obtained here, combining UCAL and UOW with a factor of 2. All right. So, there you go. By the way, if SD can be converted to CV to make it percent, you can also convert MU in units to percent uncertainty relative, and this is 1.6. And you might be asking, LD, how did you obtain 1.6? Simple. Percent uncertainty relative is equals to the URW divided by the mean times 100. All right. So that would be the percent uncertainty would be 2.22. That is this divided by the mean 134.8 times 100. That's 1.64. Okay, we round it off to 1.6. All right. Therefore, when you apply this to the patient's result, 95% confidence, I hope it has cemented your understanding on how to obtain MU in medical or clinical laboratories. Have I achieved my goal? Very good. Thank you, Mbonko. All right. By the way, I know what you're thinking. LD, this is so Zoom. What if I want to do MU in hematology or in viral load or in TSH? Do not worry. If that is your improvement project, we can definitely provide you some examples based on the ISO themselves. They provided some examples. All right. Very good. Obed said, well achieved. Okay, let's continue. All right, this is a tricky one. And last night I was thinking, okay, should I discuss this or not, or leave it alone? All right, I decided, let me give it a go. We are all familiar with this. You have seen me discussing this. I was expecting a question, but unfortunately I did not receive, or fortunately I did not receive any question from your end. But I was asked before when I was teaching this, LD, in your recording or in your documents, which is actually not mine, it's Anna's, you equate accuracy with trueness. You guys remember me saying that? So the question is, LD, are you confusing us? Based on this figure, accuracy and trueness are not the same. Is that somebody's question that you guys just didn't raise? Or that's clear on your end? I'm not getting any. Obed, is this confusing you? In some documents you've seen and me saying accuracy, open, close, trueness. Explain a little to remember, please. Okay. Let me make sure that I achieve this properly. Total error, there was a question, what's the difference between total error and measurement uncertainty? And in some instances, you've seen a document in this workshop wherein accuracy is equated with trueness, right? Here's a simple explanation. The accuracy has changed. The definition or concept of accuracy has changed over the years from meaning as simple as systematic error or bias to only to its present day definition that it represents the error in individual result. Now, the concept of accuracy, especially when you're discussing MU, includes both systematic error and random error. Are you with me? So therefore, as the MU concept is being adopted, the concept of accuracy is revised to represent the error in individual results, which reflects components of both systematic error as well as random error. Now, here's my advice to you. When you're reading materials or publications, prior to MU, here's my advice. Prior to MU, accuracy represented systematic error only, right? Based on when that resources or that publication that you are reading was created, then accuracy could represent a pre and post MU. Pre-MU, that accuracy will only be equated with systematic error and trueness. But with the MU, accuracy now represents RE plus SE. All right? I hope that clarifies things. All right. Another thing is on the, there's somebody who unmuted. Are we good? All right. Now, this term bias, I want to make sure that it's cemented. There are two definitions of bias by ISO. One is, it says the difference between the accepted value of a commutable reference material and the mean value of replicate measurements produced under repeatability conditions by a medical laboratory procedure. That's bias, right? And here's another definition of bias. The difference between the mean value of replicate measurements produced by a reference measurement procedure and the mean of value of replicate measurements produced under repeatability conditions by a lab procedure. This is the one that we start the experiment we call comparison of method. So in that comparison of method, we have the reference method and then the new method to obtain bias. All right. By the way, if you are replicating a test, replicating meaning repeating, what error will you get in replicating? Because there's an inherent error there. What error will you get? If you repeat, very good. It's RE. It's M precision. So knowing that, it's very difficult to obtain the true bias. Because in the process of estimating bias, you will have M precision, the RE. All right, complexity of this term. All right. I have one more with the word accuracy. And I have to admit, I have transgressed with the rules, the new rules of ISO. Here's a classic definition of accuracy. It's the closeness of agreement between measured quantity value and true quantity value. All right. But Sanderson was indicating in one of our webinar, well, who knows the true value? The true value, only God knows. So their reference method is the God method. All right, I think Sanderson was actually probably not joking. Okay, here's what I is saying. Measurement accuracy should not be used for measurement trueness. All right, and I admit that sometimes I equate this. Why? I come from the old understanding wherein when I say accuracy, it's equated to systematic error and trueness. So here's what ISO is saying. Measurement accuracy should not be used for measurement trueness. They're not equal. Of course, we cannot use measurement accuracy to the meaning of measurement precision. I hope with this, I have clarified some of your questions, although it was not raised. All right, there was a question, and I'm almost done. Bear with me. By the way, I may go over a bit, but it's worth it. How often do we calculate MU? This was a question raised last office hour. Now, is there somebody who can help me? How often do we calculate? Is it once and then forget about it? Yes, I think it was Moisa. Anybody, please help me. I cannot keep on talking. It's just a monotonous. Again, no answer is wrong. How often do we calculate MU? No taker? Make this it's part of MV when you need when you need it. Okay, imbalance. There you go. Once annually. Okay, one per year. Does that mean we need to calculate every year? Is that what you guys are saying? That would be a lot of work. All right. Here's my OBED. It's a continuous process. All right. A period or the free .4 of 2022-15189. It says MU should be evaluated and maintained for its intended use. where it is relevant. Okay, so it's basically saying the lab, well, please evaluate MU and maintain where it is relevant. So it's I can conclude that there are instances where MU will not be relevant. Okay, and it gives you an idea that this is not a one-time event, because 7.3.4 also says MU shall be regularly reviewed. So here's my take on what the standard is saying. If it's relevant, calculate MU. The review does not mean you have to recalculate. You just have to see if this MU is still applicable and relevant, because there are some changes in your bias or in your M precision. Moisa, was it Moisa who asked this answer? Have I helped you?
Yes, Eddie. That's very
Okay.
helpful. You have
Very
clarified
good. Okay. Now I'm concluding now, and I'm concluding not only MU but the whole what's this workshop. This is a life cycle of a test method. Okay, which starts with the testing is identified, and then the laboratory defines the criteria. What criteria are we talking about? You want to know the application, performance, and methodology characteristics of that test method that you want. And then here's a question. Do we want to develop our own, or do we want to buy and adapt? Coming from IVD, majority of us will follow this path wherein the laboratory selects a manufacturer validated method, wherein our act is laboratory verifies the method. All right. So in the verification, basically we assess the error of that method in the lab and comparing it to the claim, the performance claim. All right. Now, once it's approved, then it's implemented. There are two steps here that are very crucial. The method is monitored and changes are managed. Here, how do we monitor that method? On the chat box, please. How do you monitor a method? How do you monitor the method that you have verified? By running a daily what? Very good Mac test. QC. Not only that, I also see EQA. So monitoring the method that has already been validated by QC and EQA. All right? And then if there are changes, we manage a change, and the method is retired if it's already old and useless. Bottom line here, the monitoring of the method will be dictated by the errors that we have established in our verification. All right? Mbali was saying, how will you, what's your comment there, Mbali? How will you, oh man, I lost that one. How will you recap the method? Okay, I'm debriefing the whole workshop. By the way, so this method is monitored and changes are managed. Some would use the term long-term verification or operational verification. All right. This course at a glance, you have seen me discussing this. So let me start with method validation and verification. Wherein we need to verify the precision, linearity, comparison method, reference interval, basically assessing the error. All right. We also would need to consider measurement uncertainty. Yes, during verification, that is according to ISO 15189. Now, during the verification, we can establish the bias, and the formula is here. Imbali, I'm already concluding. From that, you can calculate your total error. Here's the formula. Bias plus your ST from the M precision. From that, you can actually calculate the SEC, which is TEA minus the bias divided by the standard deviation minus 165. From this, you can calculate your sigma. Are you guys following? Now, how do we utilize the sigma? The sigma can guide you in that monitoring in your statistical quality control. So therefore, if you select a method that has a high sigma, then your QC would be easy and straightforward. What else is the monitoring that we need to use? That is the PT and EQA as well as interlab comparison. We have completed all of this in this course. And this is a big picture of the QCMV squared. What's left? Improvement projects, which will be due on May 7, 10, 14, and 17. Before I shift to reminder and announcement, I know I'm over the time, but I'm begging you to be with me. The answer to the question and this summary, I think it's worth it. Are we good now with regards to the QCMV squared, covering QC, interlab, EQA, verification, and MU? Are we good? Yes or no, please, on the chat box. All right, thank you, Obed. Thank you. All right, let me proceed now to announcement. First, the post-test. And when you go and log in, it will look like this. It will open on Friday, the 3rd of May, 2024, and it will close on Tuesday, 7th of May, 2024. What's the implication? Well, please take the QCMV post-test within this period. All right. Last night when I was checking this, it's still restricted, but it will soon be unrestricted so that you guys can take the QCMV post-test. Okay, May 3 to 7, Echo Sessions, Improvement Project Masterclass. On May 7, office hour, we will have a quality IP planning session. And then the Echo Sessions will be on the 10th, 14th, and 17th. Janet, correct me if I'm wrong. The graduation is already also on May 17th, right?
Yes, Alvin.
All right, so just a reminder. And anything I missed, Janet or Beatrice or Kennedy?
All right, I just want to remind the guys to take the post-test. Don't leave it too long because, you know, we're all busy people and our memories fade. And another reminder that even though the test may look the same, the answers are not necessarily the same. So please do your preparation, go through your all your slides and all your activities before you take the test. We're looking for I think it was, what was it, 75% pass rate. Okay, and then I see Kennedy's put in a short survey and a long survey for today.
All right. There's another. Janet, can you briefly explain the action plan?
Sure. Okay, so that are we expecting the action plan by Monday afternoon? Monday close of business?
Yes, that's our goal, so that by Tuesday we can have something to discuss.
All right, so we're expecting that everyone has at least an idea of what their improvement project is going to be, and I'm pleased to hear, I think it was Obed that says he wants to do MU. So we sent out this action plan. So just an example, all right? So you can choose which IP you want to do, okay? If you're still uncertain, the minimum that I would suggest is that you do your SQC on the analytes that you sent in that we requested. Remember, we requested 3 for chemistry or 3 for hematology, so that you can at least get that done. And as we work through it, you can obviously pick up if you need to do any of the others. So the action plan is pretty straightforward. It's a stepwise process, and the action would be who would obviously be involved in that process, and then which IP that you want to do, okay? And then what we've got here is obviously the person responsible, the resources required, and the date completed. Timelines, obviously, if you're going to do your whole chemistry instrument with 32 analytes, it's going to take you a bit longer, okay? So I'm not too stressed about how long it takes. We want to make sure that the process of doing the improvement is completed in the 2 weeks that we've all together. So there may be things that will only come after that 2 weeks. LD, can I just share I just want to share the for the monthly QC document.
Yes, let me just
everyone.
okay, let me use my 2 slides, Janet, before we shift.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Janet, for explaining. Here's another document that you have access to, and this one you can utilize to decide what improvement project are you going to do. All right. And as Janet said, please remember to take the surveys. It's plural. Why? We will have the short survey that is for today's webinar and the long survey, right? I believe Kennedy already has sent that out. All right. To have a clear cut, please send your questions for office hour. That will be our echo session to the course coordinator by COB Monday. All right. Janet, let me stop sharing and go ahead, please. Thank you.
Okay. I know, guys, we're over time, but I would just like to show you what we sent, because I know you've got a lot of information and you might find it a bit tricky. So just give me a second. Okay, can I ask if you can see the monthly log? All right, so that would be the document you'll use in order for you to complete your action, even if it is only on the 3 analytes. Okay, so we're going to have a look at that. If you've got questions, bring them for Tuesday. And I'm going to show you, just give me 1 second. There's the action plan that I sent out, or Kennedy sent out to you, with a bit more detail for calculating your second sigma for and implementing your sigma rules for chemistry tests. Now remember what I said, you could say for 3 chemistry tests or 3 hematology tests, okay? And then we give a time frame. And then basically I've put the steps in, so you don't have to think about those steps. You just need to review them and see whether you're going to do them all for chemistry or hematology, and then we'll work through that with you on Tuesday. So if you are going, whichever IP that you're going to do, please put in the action plan. So your aim for method verification would be something like, I want to do my method verification on 3 tests by such and such a date. And then you can use the same process step by step on what you need to do in order for you to get that verified, which experiments you're required to do, and we can help you with that. So I'm not sure if there are any other questions. I'll just stop sharing.
Thank you, Janet. If you guys have questions, don't worry. We will have more time with questions with regards to the improvement project. We want to be efficient with the improvement project. So therefore, by Tuesday, please have something already in mind on what improvement project you will be doing. because we only have 2 weeks. The goal here is for the master trainers, and trust me, Beatrice and Janet can guide you in whatever IP you will have. All right. Kennedy, can we end the recording, please? And there's one more poll question that Kennedy will send. Kennedy, can we launch that poll question? And then again, my apology for extending a bit, few minutes, but I think it's worth it. And you will forgive me because this is our last webinar.